What would you do if you had nothing to fear? What would you change if you had nothing to lose? What would you pursue if you didn't care what anyone else thought of you? Welcome to the Have You Seen Me Now podcast. I'm your host, Sherilyn. Have you seen me now? Have you seen me now? Oh my gosh, can you guys believe we are already on episode 5? I don't know about you, but I am so ready for this one. I took a little time off last weekend for some soul care, and it was so good for me, but it did mean it set me behind on my goals of getting a podcast out. I usually try to get out either Friday or Monday, kind of depending how my life falls. If you don't know, I work a full-time job. I write and record music. I usually am doing all of my creative ventures nights and weekends. So I'm often burning the candle at both ends to do all of my creative passions, which I love. And normally, it feels really fulfilling and satisfying. It doesn't always feel like work, to do my creative things. But reality is I only have so much fuel in the tank. And sometimes I need to put my soul care and my body care first, even above my creative goals and dreams. And so I found that really hard. I actually felt really guilty. I only took like 24 hours last weekend and a friend came to town. And so we hung out from like Friday night to Saturday night. And well, of course, I slept in the middle of all that, but just meaning that I kind of gave myself this 24-hour pass while my friend was in town to just play, to go out to eat, to go have, pie and coffee and to get out to the beach and have fish tacos and go for a hike and just enjoy life. And I realized how long it had been since I really let myself do that. And I had been just so used to kind of the grind, just coming home from work, from my work week, and then diving into all my creative work. And my Friday nights and Saturdays are often full of writing and recording music or being on Zoom to record a song with another songwriter somewhere in the world, or, recording a podcast or editing podcasts or whatever it might be. Maybe I'm working on even creating social media content, whether it's clips of the podcast or clips of songs or, it goes on and on. But I think that I'm realizing I do have to find that work, play, life balance, right? And I'm not good at that. I tend to be really hard on myself. And so I actually was struggling with feelings of guilt last weekend that I was like, man, I've got to get where I'm not feeling guilty for taking a breath, not feeling guilty for enjoying life and all that it has to offer. And so it's still one of those things where I'm like, oh man, I didn't release a podcast last weekend like I really wanted to, but I'm realizing that I really needed to do that for myself. And so most likely you guys didn't even notice that a podcast has been a week delayed, and that's great. But I think that I've just decided I'm going to get on this schedule where I release podcasts as my soul, body, and schedule permit, in that sense of I'm going to try to take the pressure off myself to always have this consistent release date, but that they just get to be surprises. You may never know when they're coming. In fact, I actually already kind of want to release a podcast this coming week. I may release one sooner than a week. I don't know. Who makes the rules? I make the rules. So I'm just going to flow with it. So that's where we're at. I have the honor of sharing with you this powerful interview with a dear friend of mine, a gifted, talented, and up-and-coming independent filmmaker, Doug Barden. I had to laugh a little bit, though, because I had been debating which episode to release next. I have a few recorded and waiting to be edited. And so I started to edit his episode last night. I just felt like it was the right one to come next. And while I was editing, I took a little break and got myself a little sip of some decaf coffee and hopped on Facebook for a second. And I got one of those notifications that was like, 3 years ago today, and it was actually a video of Doug and I, and we were hanging out in my apartment, my old apartment here in SLO, and I was playing the ukulele and he was playing his guitar, and we were harmonizing and singing that song, Falling Slowly from the movie Once. It's totally one of my favorites. And it was such a fond memory with a dear friend, and it seemed super timely and so appropriate to spend episode 5 reflecting on how far we've both come in the last 3 years since playing guitars together in my apartment here in SLO. Doug was raised in Maryland, actually, just outside of Washington, D.C. After getting his undergrad from the University of Wyoming, he spent 18 years in TV news, working in 6 different markets nationwide as a multi-Emmy Award winner for Best Newscast even. Doug's adventurous spirit has taken him to 50 countries. And not only does he love to ski and kayak and mountain climb, including Kilimanjaro in 2019, he has also completed a full Ironman, several half Ironmans, and multiple marathons. So stick around, because today we get to hear about how he pivoted his entire career from being Doug the corporate news guy to getting ready to produce his first feature film. You're going to be so inspired by his story, and I think every single one of you are going to be able to find some gold nuggets in this one. So grab a cup of coffee and hang around, because we're going to hear about how it started versus how it's going in Doug's life. And my hope at the end of this podcast is that you realize that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Never be afraid to try new things. Let it be messy and follow that breadcrumb trail of joy in your life. And, you know, you can look back one day and say to all the haters, or maybe even to your own inner critic, yeah, you might have known me back then when I was insecure and I didn't understand my own worth, and I never thought I would be good enough to do what I really wanted to do with my life, and I doubted myself for so long. But man, have you seen me now? This episode is brought to you by Starboard Stride, a unique boutique production company, record label, podcast service, and sync songwriters collective based in San Luis Obispo, California. Starboard Stride is focused on writing songs for the TV, ad, and film industry while developing new artists and producing broadcast quality podcasts. Visit starboardstride.com today and mention the Have You Seen Me Now podcast for 10% off podcast production or artist coaching packages. Visit today's show notes for website and details. Greetings, stellar rock stars. I am so excited to have my dear friend Doug Barden in the house today. I'm so glad that you're here.
I'm so happy that you decided to have me here. This is a little foreign to me, but I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Well, it's a bit of a reunion for us. We haven't got to hang out in the same space in a while, so it's really fun to have you here in the studio at Starboard Stride. I am so stoked to be able to reconnect and share with the listeners your story, because I think, I know that your friendship has meant so much to me over the years, because you have definitely encouraged me in my own journey. And so I think it's so cool to see kind of how we both have had these big pivots in our life. Mm-hmm. So for those who want to know the backstory, how Doug and I met, we actually met at church, and I think it was 7 years ago. I was trying to do the math.
Has it really been that long?
I know. It's 6 or 7, something like that, because that's about how long I've been here in SLO. So that's wild. But wow. Yeah, but then it kind of our friendship had evolved to playing guitars and talking songs, talking movies. Right?
You actually are the first person ever to get me to sing in front of anybody else. So
I have video footage,
and your ears survived.
We had good times. We had a lot of good times.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Oh man, it was so good. But I also remember lots of talks over coffee and talking dreams and talking the next 5 years and what are you struggling with? And I think I just wanted to let the listeners almost have a chance to be a part of that conversation here today.
Oh, fantastic. And I've just got to jump in to say just how proud I am of you to be at this point. I mean, it's what a cool pivot and what a cool story that you have, but to be, sitting in this room and chatting with you on your very own podcast. I'm just like so super proud of you. So.
Oh, thanks, friend. That's awesome. So, as you know, we've been talking on the podcast about this idea of how it started versus how it's going. And for someone who's had a big pivot in their life, really sharing the journey. And so would you just start by telling the listeners how it started for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a good place to start as any is kind of back in my teenage years. And when I was, 15, 16 years old, and I had always, I guess, loved film, and then as I dug deeper, I just loved telling good stories. And film was a way of doing that for me. And I did it all through high school. And I had a, great group of friends back where I grew up in Maryland. And we used to, grab an old camcorder and run around the woods and make these movies. And by the time I graduated high school, I think I had made, it was 4 or 5 movies.
No way.
And one of them was like an hour long. I mean,
no way. Do you still have those somewhere?
I do. And they are on VHS. And that's probably where they were made. To spare everybody that. But no, I think it would be fun to actually digitize those someday because I haven't watched them since high school, so it would be rather entertaining. But yeah, so I ended up just making films, and that's kind of where my heart was, and that's what I felt I wanted to do in my life. And so I went to college. Actually, I went out west because I also really wanted to ski, and I wanted to get in the mountains. So I attended the University of Wyoming in Laramie, and I went out there, and they don't have a film program. In fact, they didn't really much have really anything. And, basically when it came to my senior year and I needed an internship, I remember my college advisor said, well, there's a TV station over in Cheyenne, so why don't you head over there and you can do an internship there and maybe they'll at least let you play with a camera. And then that's kind of how I got started on my first career. They did let me play with the camera and I was able to tell stories. They were, different stories, but I didn't really mean to get on the news train. It just kind of happened. And like there's this point, whether it's, you're out of high school, you're out of college, and then you kind of have to pick this career. You have to pick this path. So you end up getting on this train, and maybe it's your parents push you on the train, or you fall onto the train, or you're like, and then one day you just wake up and you're moving on this train and you're comfortable on this train. And you're like, how did I end up on this train? You're like, wait a second. And now it's moving really fast. And I kind of want to be on that train over there. So you just, start like looking around and you're like, and then you just like, there's this internal battle, I think. And I think a lot of people, when they get in their, late 30s, early 40s, or, not even put a time frame on it. But, when I talk to my friends, I think that's really when it really hits most people is they just look at it, it's like, man, this is not exactly really where my heart's been.
Yeah.
I mean, fast forward, I had worked in multiple television stations just around the country. And my last news job was I started the NBC and Fox affiliate in Lafayette, Louisiana. So I went down to Louisiana for a year, which I got to be honest with you, was one of the most thrilling years of my life. I loved living in Louisiana. Wow. If you've never been down to that part of the country, it is really cool. And just super nice people, amazing music, incredible food, just this really unique culture and such. It's just like this pocket down there of just coolness. And, even from New Orleans to Lafayette, there's just like this huge difference. I met some wonderful people down there, but I was just pulled to, be an entrepreneur, start my own company. Because I think I woke up one day and just realized, obviously like many companies, news was run by, large corporations. As is now, these companies continue to grow and they have more and more and more stations. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had working for them. But, I would work really, really, really hard, and you work long hours. And then if there's breaking news, we covered this massive once and forever flood in Lafayette. And I remember sleeping in my office. And, it's just like...
I remember times we'd be hanging out, having pizza and playing guitars, and you'd get a call and be like, sorry, I got to go. Like, there's like, there was a shooting or something. Right. Like,
there's nothing ever... Yeah, I mean, news truly doesn't sleep. And and honestly, I think some of the hardest working people out there are, local journalists, particularly, where it's just, and it's such an important job, but it's a tough business model, I think, with how everything is now. And so budgets kept shrinking and newsrooms kept shrinking, and we just kept having to do more with less. And then I just kind of started feeling like, man, I work and I work and I work and I work so hard and I've sacrificed so much. And for what? Yeah. Like at the end of the day, what am I really doing it for? And that's when that really seed started planting of this like, well, if I don't do this, then what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then that's that really weird point of, it's like, do I jump off this train? Right. And
that looks really scary. It's a long way down.
It's a long way. And I think back to a colleague of mine at a station I worked with in Salt Lake City. She was like a promotions manager for, I don't know how many years, like 26, 30 years or something like that. And I remember seeing on Facebook that she had quit and moved to Paris to study to become a pastry chef.
Wow.
Because it's what she always wanted to do. And I reached out to her. I was like, how was this? And she's like, it was brutal. But she was happy.
Wow.
And so I kind of just started thinking back to film. Like I hadn't even really thought of it because it was such a dream. It was just out there. And I was just like, it's people do it and whatever, but
untouchable almost.
Right. Yeah. But that can't be me. So I knew I needed to leave news because I wasn't doing anybody any favors by staying in it. So I left and started like this little t-shirt company just because I'm like, I've got to try something.
Yeah.
So I started this company and then I moved back to California, but that wasn't really fulfilling in the same way. So I was just kind of lost. And then when you're in that point, you get the pull back to what's comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So you haven't really jumped off the train yet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, and then you kind of realize like, well, if I'm going to really do this, I'm going to have to basically, kill Doug the news guy. Like
Scary.
Right. Like you kind of have to kill who you were to kind of be reborn into the person you were meant to be.
Wow.
Yes. And it's scary. It's scary to do that.
When so much of your identity is wrapped up in it, you feel maybe even proud of your status that you've reached at this point, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've invested all this so far.
And then you're just going to take all that away from yourself?
Right.
And then start back at ground zero type thing?
Right.
And it was August of, I don't know, probably 2017 maybe at this point. I did this solo backpacking trip. I just took my dog, I loaded up my backpack, and we went into the Ansel Adams Wilderness up outside of Mammoth and was back there for 3 days and, just saw very few people, didn't really talk, and just kind of reflected. And the only way to describe it is like when I came out, I just knew that I had to give it a shot. You can call it crazy, you can call it whatever you want, but it's just like I knew that if I didn't give it a shot right now, that I would have to wait for my next life to try it. And that just wasn't acceptable to me. And so I said, okay, I'm really truly gonna jump off this train.
Wow.
And so I literally sold the farm. I sold my house. First what I did was I said, there's different ways to do this. I can just, move to LA and like what everybody does and just try it. Nice thing is I do have life experience and I do have experience of managing newsrooms. So, I do look at it more as a pivot, but I chose to, do some research on film programs. And after doing research and knowing how I learned, I settled on the American Film Institute, AFI, because you really truly learn by actually making movies. So your first year there, you make 3 short films. Actually, I ended up making 4. And I can't speak highly enough of that program. It's an incredible program, amazing group of people run it. It is without a doubt, in my opinion, the number 1 film school in the world, and according to the rankings too. Now it's the number 1 film school. But that's kind of what really got me started. I did have a lot to learn, and I knew that. Yeah. But I was excited to learn, and I was excited to grow again. And doing a pivot in your life like this really helps you kind of realize how much more you do have to learn.
Yeah.
Not just about whatever you're going out to do, but also about yourself. You learn just how much pain you can withstand, just how much you can, push yourself to that limit. And, jumping off that train is brutal. And like the landing hurts and the tumbling hurts. And when you do it, even your friends and even your own family will look at you and be like, what are you doing?
Have you done?
Like, are you nuts?
Well, and I can remember like a few coffee conversations right around the time you were debating whether or not to apply to AFI. And I remember you kind of wrestling it through. And then I remember like the text, like, I did it. Talk a little bit about like that process from like, I'm scared. I don't know if I can jump off the train. I don't know if I can even like find the courage to apply. Like what kind of pushed you to finally do it?
Yeah, I think my father always told me, you should apply for everything because you can always turn it down. So I think it was less about the applying and more about like, oh crap, what if I get in? What if they actually accept me? Because it's a worldwide program and they only take 140 fellows a year, only 29 in each of their 6 disciplines, actually, less in even editing and production design. So I think there was that fear of just like, oh my God, what if I get in? And then I had this long waiting period, and that was like that, okay, what do I really do? Because if I get in, I'm going to need to make a decision. Yeah. And then, I mean, looking back on it, it's tough because it's fear. Like, it's incredible how much fear can paralyze us. And when I look back throughout everything in my life, I was surprised how much fear controlled a lot of my decisions. Yeah. But I also looked back that, you know, I had accomplished a lot in a way. I mean, not just professionally, but I mean, in 2014, I ended up doing an Ironman because somebody once, you know, told me what an Ironman was, and I thought, well, I could never do that. That's stupid, and that kind of pissed me off. So I was like, no, yeah, I think you could do it, and I just kind of went out and did it.
I love it.
And then you start thinking about it, it's like, wow, you know what? I think humans really, like, we really can accomplish anything if we just really work hard at it and play the game and work yourself up. And it is tough when you're kind of mid-career or whatever, and you look at it and you're like, God, do I really want to start over? Yeah. But again, I was just pulled to do it. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you went down to AFI, you moved your life again down to LA.
Yeah. So when I finally did it, like I said, it was amazing how, you know, family and friends, some of them just lost their mind. They're like, are you crazy? Are you stupid? And then you just like start getting all this self-doubt in your head. You're like, oh my God, well, I don't know if I am or not. Ask me in a couple of years. Right. But then I was surprised at how many people were like so incredibly supportive. You know, like you were you were so amazingly over the moon, excited for me. And,
I was stoked for you because I saw you lighting up.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's the thing. It's like when you see a friend or a loved one who you can see them kind of shriveling up and their heart just kind of dying, slowly dying. Right. And then when you see them come to life, and I could just see the light in your eyes, and I could see how excited you were. And so I knew that you were going to like go and kill it because you were so passionate about it. Yeah. And you had been since a kid, you know, and it was just like this fire that had been burning in you for so long that you wanted a platform to tell stories in a beautiful way. Yeah. And you were so stoked about it. So I was thrilled for you.
Yeah. And getting to AFI was, you know, I felt like a kid again. I was super excited, but you know, every class that goes into the AFI feels that same way. And, you know, because they're all selected. And I mean, in my class alone, there were people from more countries than there were states. Wow. You know, and so it's such a diverse group. That's cool. And it's incredibly humbling. You know, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Yeah. Because, you know, jumping off the train, you can't get hurt in the air. Yeah. It's not until you land. So, and so I landed at AFI, and I landed hard, and it's tough. I mean, it's a tough program, and, you know, making movies is a very difficult business. Yeah. Not just from a competitive standpoint, but I was in the producing program, so it's just you've got to spin so many plates at the same time and not drop any of them, you know? So it was humbling, and there were some tough nights, but I met some incredible people. I had housemates again for the first time, and I don't know how long, but they were just an amazing group of people, and they were all AFI, you know, fellows with me. And so we helped each other through it, and I built some great contacts, and I got the experience that I really needed and the experience I was looking for to really start on this journey.
That's amazing.
But at the same time, I was still trying to kill Doug the news guy, you know? Like, it's funny because, like, even when you're out of it and you know you don't want to be in it anymore, you still get pulled back. Maybe you get a phone call. Maybe you get, you know, somebody's like, oh, well, you know, this job just opened up. You sure you don't want that? And you're like, well, you mean, are you sure you don't want to make money and have proper health insurance? And, no, that sounds really good right now. But now I'm going to, you know, like I've kind of committed to this, and I've gotten on this train. But the problem is usually when you get on that new train, at least for me, you know, it's at a dead stop. And to try to move, you know, like a brand new train, you're just like, do I have the energy to really pull this off? So I finished my program at AFI, and then you just say, you know, okay, well, what now? Yeah. Right? Now I got to go do something. And now I'm in a town where really nobody wants to talk to you. I mean, Hollywood's a very interesting place where if you have everything, people want to give you everything. When you have nothing, people want to give you nothing, you know? And so I found it really difficult, and I just kept trying different things. It's like, well, I'll try to get this little web series going. No, that didn't work. Okay, well, let me try to get this feature going. Well, that didn't work. Okay, well, let me try to work with this guy to get this. Okay, this doesn't
like
work.
Constantly iterating. I totally get that. It's like you're coming out of a course and a class and everything's super structured and deadlines and all the assignments and different things, and then suddenly you're on your own to like find the path,
right,
and figure out how to make a living at it.
Yes, exactly.
And so you're like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And I find I've been doing a lot of that lately in my life too. Like just keep iterating and just keep trying things. And you almost kind of see like, where does the spaghetti stick to the wall? Right?
Exactly. No, that's the best way to look at it is you keep literally start, throwing these noodles at the wall and you're like, please, my God, something stick. And that's the hardest part, honestly, because then that inner critic starts getting really loud in your head and it starts poking at you and it starts saying like, yeah, see, you are an idiot for jumping off that train and maybe you should go back. And it's battling through those. And that was a good solid, I don't know. My concept of time's all over the place right now. But I mean,
the pandemic doesn't help.
No,
right?
It doesn't, right? It was like,
what year is it now? I don't know.
But no, that was a good solid, probably 2 years, a year and a half at least of just really dark, where it's just, I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to get this thing going. And to be completely candid, and I don't really speak too openly about it, but I slipped into a pretty bad depression, where it just, your head really just messes with you. Yeah. And then you just feel like I am a failure. Like I cannot seem to make anything right. And I'm just stupid. And I think all the people that looked at me like I was stupid, they're right. And, maybe I am a failure. Maybe I don't belong in this world and maybe I can't do it. Yeah. And it's incredible the power of our brains when we allow them to take over like that. And I only surrounded myself with people who not only loved me and believed in me, but believed in me more than even I believed in myself. Because that's so important when you have that. And so I just kind of was just fighting through it. And then it was last September, October, I got a phone call from somebody that I had gone to AFI with, a director, and she had been approached to direct a feature. Wow. And she's like, will you produce it?
No way.
And I said, one, yes. Yeah. Two,
let's get that straight, right? Real quick.
Two, can I read the script? So I read the script and I fell in love with it because it's kind of stories that I want to tell. And so I was basically brought on to this team very early on. And the director that brought me on, she ended up deciding that it wasn't the right project for her. Okay. But I asked her, I was like, are you okay if I stay on this? Because my relationship with you is important. And she's like, absolutely. And she was so super supportive of it. So I stayed on this project, and it's a feature written by an up-and-coming actor who's an incredibly talented human being, and his wife, and his name, for people that want to IMDb him, his name is Jeremy Ford. Cool. And he and his wife wrote this beautiful father-son story, and it's basically about a son coming to terms with his father's imminent passing from cancer, but it's also written as it's kind of like a dramedy. So there's a lot of good comedic elements in it. But it obviously takes on a very heavy subject, but I just really connected with it, and I connected with them, and we kind of put the script in development, and we did a lot of hard work, and we have it at a place now that it's really functioning well, and we have two incredible investors who are super excited about the project. Awesome. So right now we're slated to shoot in the end of September of this year. Wow. 2021.
That is so exciting. Yeah. When I was hearing you talk about when you were walking through, fighting depression and being in that dark space, that definitely is a theme that has come up in conversation on the podcast with almost everyone who's had a major pivot. Has been like this season of kind of darkness in their life. Yeah. And so I just wanted to pause there a minute, because I was thinking kind of like almost like a really practical picture of how when you plant a seed, that the seed kind of lives in that dark space until it finally breaks through, right? And you see the little seedling kind of popping through the soil. And I just keep being reminded how important it is, like you were saying, to have people around you that are like watering the seed, making sure you get sunlight, you get plant food, right? This whole thing of like, there's something really key, I think, that when we know we're walking through those dark times, that we have people around us that continue to to really care for us and care for those seeds that have been planted in our heart and remind us what we're good at, remind us that we have a story to tell. And I think that that's been like a continued theme I keep seeing come up over and over again. And so what would you say to those people who are going through those kryptonite seasons of their life that feel really dark? What are some of those things that you've had to overcome, and how would you encourage people that are feeling like in that dark pit right now?
It's so weird to be sitting here and being asked that question because I don't feel like it was really that long, because it wasn't that long ago that I was in that space. And so for me to be giving any advice on it, I'm like, wow. I mean, because like I was looking for advice then. I tried to get into meditation. That really didn't help me. I did continue to work out. So I think that helped. Being active really helped me out. But in terms of battling that mental game, only you can walk through it. Yeah. I mean, you can surround yourself with people that'll help you, but you have to go through that pain. I always kind of lived with this mindset that, isn't it refreshing to know that some of the best times of your life haven't yet happened? Yeah. And I always told myself that. And I remember when it was really dark, I would keep kind of saying that quote in my head. And then I was just like, I don't know if I believe that anymore. Like maybe the best years of my life are behind me. How I got through it is just like you literally just have to wake up every day and force yourself to move. Yeah. And, maybe you don't get a lot done. During quarantine, I ended up writing a feature script with another colleague of mine at AFI. And I remember, I was in some pretty dark times even when I started that. And just even trying to write a script and you're in that headspace is just, it was brutal. But every day you just sit down and you just go through it. And the only way, even when it's the worst that you can't even imagine that it could get any worse, there is always that light at the end of the tunnel. There's just something like subconsciously that I knew, like this isn't going to last forever. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I can do. I just need to create the opportunity to make that happen. And the only person that can do it really is yourself. So you just have to push yourself through it. And if you look for somebody else to pull you out of it, it's not going to happen. Yeah. If you're waiting for some Hail Mary or somebody that's going to pluck you out of obscurity, not to say that doesn't happen, but there's this old Thomas Jefferson quote that I love. I find the harder I work, the luckier I get. And so I just kept plugging away at it. And then just one day it just kind of clicked. And literally and figuratively, I have made nothing yet. It's just, this feature film, it's yes, we're going to shoot it. Now the actual work begins. Like, everything leading up to this was me just getting to base camp. Now I actually have to start the climb. That's amazing. But that's also the most exciting part. Yeah. Because now it's like, okay, now I can finally prove to the world and to myself. Yeah. Yeah, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to help build this thing with this team. Yeah. And it's going to be a great movie, and it's just going to be the beginning of what I hope to be many more.
Yeah, I love that. So now that you've pivoted from Doug the news guy to just, producing a feature film, like talk a little bit just about how it's going for you. Like you were talking about having those moments where people might call you about a news job, and have these little things or maybe trying to tug you back onto the other train. Do you still feel like torn between the trains, or do you feel like you found your path?
Regret's an interesting word that I always lived with. I have no regrets. Everything that I do and everything that I've done, the mistakes, everything, it's been a learning experience. And I had to go through that to learn. Do I wish I had done this 10 years sooner? That's a big question that I struggle with. In the dark times, I was saying, yeah, I wish I had done this 10 years sooner. Where I am now, no. I'm doing it right when I'm supposed to be doing it. And I'm doing it when I'm supposed to be doing it because I have the life experience. I'm a mature adult. Some would argue that, but, I'm a mature adult now that can actually do this. I don't know if Doug, the news guy from 10 years ago, really could have pulled this off. I might have gotten eaten alive. I don't know, because it is a brutal business and it's highly competitive. But I have the confidence and, frankly, the life experience of living all over the country and, doing my travels and doing my adventures. It's just, I wasn't born and raised in the Southern California bubble and haven't explored the world. It's just the opposite. And I think that brings a unique voice to everything that I'm tackling right now. I think things have been done in Hollywood the same way for a very long time, but it's also a very exciting time to be there because it's so rapidly changing how things are done is changing. How people consume content is so rapidly changing. I mean, it really is the golden age of content is how I look at it. It's just, I mean, you flip on your phone, your TV, your computer, whatever. You can consume content on so many different platforms all over the place. Or it's, gone are the days where you're just like, oh, I'm just going to make a movie. You have to go to a movie theater and you got to sit down and you got to watch it. So it's like, we don't even know what movie theaters are going to look like 5 years from now. So it's an exciting time to be here. And I think I bring some good outside perspective. And I'm working with great people on this project. And my goal is to continue to work with great people who want the same thing, but will treat others with respect and make great art. And let's turn around and we'll do it again.
That's amazing. Well, I think our listeners are going to want to keep up with you on this journey to make this feature film. So how can they connect with you online?
The easiest way is probably Instagram. I still dabble with Instagram, which is just at Doug Barden. So
awesome. So find Doug on Instagram. I'll put his information in the show notes if you want to connect with him there. And I think it'll be fun to follow this adventure, Doug, and see where this goes. I cannot wait to see the film that you put together. It's
Thanks.
Really exciting.
Thank you.
So if you could leave the listeners with some parting words of wisdom today, going back to your own inner critic that maybe for years kept you on the news train and prevented you from taking the leap, or maybe even to some haters in your life or friends or family members who maybe you were worried that, they'd think you're crazy if you jump off the train. How would you encourage listeners as they're facing that inner critic to not be afraid to take the leap and chase their dreams? I
kind of heard other people ask that question when I was going through a dark time, and I think they all pretty much say the same thing. But I can honestly say it's just I seriously was there not that long ago. Honestly, these last 5 years of my life, I've kind of been in this tumultuous state in my heart, and I'm just like been pulled, and I'm dark, and just the only advice is like there is a light at the end, like there is. And if you just stick it out and you keep grinding it, even if it's just wake up, pour yourself a cup of coffee and write 3 words, it's at least progress. And as long as you do that every single day and not give up on your dream and not give up on yourself, you'll pull out of it. It's just like, it just happens. And I mean, hopefully nobody's going through that, but if somebody is listening to it and they're like, no, but you don't understand. Oh, no, I do understand. Trust me, because I was there and I heard other people say this, but I can honestly say, like, I look at where I am now and, I wouldn't say I'm out of the woods by any means, but it's just like, wow, I've at least gotten momentum on the new train. Yeah. And it's just, the hard work's ahead of me, but it's fun work. Yeah. Like what I'm doing now, it's fun and I'm passionate about it. My heart's in it. It's like, okay, this is what I'm lacking. Yeah. This is what I've been lacking in my life. So
I love that. Oh man, I think the story is going to really encourage a lot of people who are going through those dark times. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Doug, and sharing your story. So awesome.
Thank you for having me. And again, I'm so proud of you for doing this. And if anybody will listen to this from my group, it's going to be my mother. So you guys.
I love it. That's amazing. Well, thank you to Mama Barden for listening. You have a pretty cool kid, and I know you must be so very proud. And thank you to each and every one of you, my dear friends, for taking time to hang out with Doug and I on the Have You Seen Me Now podcast today. I hope you're walking away from today's episode realizing that no matter how dark it may seem in your life right now, there is always a glimmer of hope ahead. So keep straining towards it. Remember that you're being refined, reinforced, and are finding out how freaking strong you have been all along. So stand tall, hold your head up high, own your own fierceness, and walk in the wonder that is you. I'll be talking to you again real soon, but until then, live loud and proud, my friends. Thanks for listening to the Have You Seen Me Now podcast. I'm your host, Sherilyn. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. You can find my music and all links to social media at HaveYouSeenMeNow.com. Have you seen me now? Doing the familiar. You tossed me out like yesterday's news, but now on center stage. Have you seen me now?